Hey, welcome to Real Love Guitars. I'm Sam. This is the Real Love Guitars workshop, and today, well, I've got a couple of things, but I'm going to start with Richard's 12 string. Now what we have here is a kit built guitar, and Richard got in touch with me and brought this over yesterday, and it's a kit that he's got from G4M, and basically it's not a bad looking start. It's got a kind of it's a basswood body, 4-piece by the look of it, and it's got a nicely sort of chamfer beveled rounded edge with a bit of a painted binding, I think. Maybe it's an actual binding, I can't tell immediately. And then it's in a Telecaster style, as you can see, and it's not an expensive kit, so it's the ideal thing to kick off with. And I've made a kit myself, and if you're a 50-something chap who's looking to get back into guitar playing, there's no better way than getting one of these. They really are inexpensive. I think this is about 75 quid. I know that Thomann online have kits starting off at about £65, something like that. I mean, really, 65 euros or 70 euros, really cheap. And you have endless opportunity for fun putting one of these together. Teach you an awful lot of stuff if you didn't know it before. As much as you want to find out, it'll teach you, and that's a great potential. So great for the youngsters, you know, brilliant present for somebody, teenager or somebody coming into their early teenage years, just as it's a great present for the older guy, even if he hasn't got a shed, or girl in your life who plays guitar or is interested. So this is a G4M kit, and what I can see from this is that Richard's done all the right things in putting it together. It's kind of like physically together, in good shape, and he's got it all strung up and everything. But what he's discovered is, even once it's put together, it doesn't really play very well, and you can see straight away one of the reasons why. Certainly it doesn't look too bad on this side, but on this bass side you have what looks like just a humongous playing action. I mean, it's probably about 4 or 5 millimeters. And that's with the bridge saddles right down on the ground, on the plate. So what it tells me straight away is that this neck, as it sits in the pocket, is both wonky in terms of it's canted up this way, but it's also kind of some distance down from the strings with no further adjustment. You can't take the strings down any further to make them reach the neck, and short of doing what we're going to have to do, which is shimming it to bring the neck up to meet the strings and give us any hope of getting a nice playing action. And that's what it deserves to be like that, because, as I say, Richard's done all the right stuff. He's put it together nicely, and for his sake, I'm a bit disappointed in the quality of this from G4M. I have to say, I've not come across a problem. I've had 2 or 3 Thomann kits in my time, and I haven't found a problem with any of them. But this isn't fantastic, because if you were a youngster getting hold of this, you'd be pretty disappointed, because you just couldn't play it. And especially with a 12 string, where it takes so much energy to get it all tuned up perfectly, if you go through all of that energy and then it's almost impossible to play, you just kind of give up on it. So anyway, the mission here is to take this slightly sad guitar, a bit of a badly done kit, and we're going to need to sort of balance this up and reposition this neck so that it fixes in a way that gives Richard back a decent action, and it turns into the guitar that it should have been when he first put it together. Now, of course, one of the things about setting up a 12-string guitar, it's quite time consuming, particularly well, also an electric 12-string. Stringing one's quite time consuming, but setting one up where you have to get the neck off, put the neck on, try a different shim and so on, with 12 strings all waiting to coil off the pegs at the end, it can be really frustrating. So I'm going to take you through some of it, but you might forgive me if I get completely frustrated at that point, or at any point I should say. So what strikes me is this, is that to get this working, we've got to work out at some point how much to lift the neck up. Now, some clever people know that there's a kind of measurement formula. Some people said to me, well, if you know you've got to drop it by let's say 5 millimeters here, you want to drop the whole action by 5 millimeters, then you have to raise the, lower the bridge, sorry, by 10, so it turns into a bigger movement at that end than here. And I have to just take the word for it that halfway is double the height there, so that sounds good. But I've never quite worked that out in my head. So if I seem obtuse when it comes to numbers, I tend to do it more by feel, and having used lots of bits of copper before as shims, I tend to just sort of have a guess and then feel around and see what it does. Now, technically speaking, if I were to do the mathematical thing and work it out precisely, then it would probably save me a bit of time, but I'm kind of stuck in my ways. This is a little bit more difficult in the sense that we've got to both tilt it and shim it and tilt it to balance it all up. And on top of that, everything sits a little bit too far towards you than it ought to. Now it's the smaller of the problems, and if I can't get an adjustment easily, I'm not going to fret about that, because we don't really, we could do a little bit of a push at the bottom inside edge to kind of cant the whole thing this way. You don't have any leverage obviously inside this part of the pocket, so it's a mixture of possibly a microscopic shim in there, a bit of pull and a reset. But again, remember all of that while we've got 12 strings waiting to spring off, so kind of challenging in a way. So the first thing I'm going to do is looking at this. Oh, the other thing, by the way, on this guitar is that it is due, and I know that Richard's got it, it really ideally needs a bar across here, a tensioner bar, because there's just a bit of a danger that these strings are, the middle ones, the G's and the D's, are just a little bit light on the nut. I'm not saying they are, they're probably not, but they, you know, they need to have a bit of a break angle. If they become 0 break angle, then you're just a fraction from them lifting off almost. There's a potential that they don't sit properly on the nut, which will ruin your tone. Anyway, so this is an interesting thing, because I've got to think about the order of events now. First thing I could do is I could say, well, I could lift all of these up to where we physically want them. Now, why would we do that? I'm never happy when something is either at its full down or it's full up. I'd much rather a default position, a happy medium, was in its middle position. Now, since we've got to shim this one way or t'other anyway, it kind of makes sense to say, look, we need to start with this thing screwed in far enough to give us a sort of halfway. Now obviously Richard's done the opposite. He's pushed the saddle right down to give him as close to a good playing configuration as possible, and to be taking this upwards now would seem to him like the last thing he'd want to do, because obviously I'm going to use a different device here. It would seem to be the last thing he'd want to do, because he's obviously trying to get down to reach the frets, as opposed to what I'm doing now is I'm lifting the strings even further from the frets. But I'm just gonna sort of do it in a rough spread. I'm copying what looks to be about a 16-inch radius, and it's just by eye at the moment. So what I'm kind of aiming to end up with is a saddle positioning that I kind of, that looks a bit like what I'd aim to have at the end when I've also got a beautiful low action. So once I've got this really low action with the saddle set in the middle, I can go upwards and I can go downwards a bit more if I want. It just isn't sitting right on the deck. Partly the problem with it sitting on the deck is also the break angle here is reduced to virtually nothing. So you have the same problem at both ends if this is on the deck as well. So it kind of, one of the strings, the thicker of the strings here, goes straight down through the body and one comes through the back. So one of them has a good break angle, but the one coming through the back, when these saddles are set low, has virtually no break angle at all. So we want to give it the best chance of sounding nice. So in a sense, whoops, really a bit higher rather than lower on these fellas is what we want to do. And so it's obviously under tension right now, so it's not the easiest thing to crank up, but it'll get there. Well, of course, doing this raises the whole playing action kind of miles off, even further off the. Oh, that's a cat. Who's that? Who's meowing? Come on then. Come in. Yeah, what do you want? Did you have something to bring me? Like a dead thing? No? No. Do you want to sit in here out the rain? You can sit on there. Just stay there. Be good. That's Morris's sister. Whether she'll sit there or not and behave is another matter. I think that's a no. Anyway, she's going to come up here in a minute. Yeah, so what am I doing? Yeah, so we want to raise these up to increase that angle so that the thinner of the strings gets a good sort of bend over, or good angle over the bridge saddle. Well, that's bound to happen, isn't it? Hey. I could have avoided that possibly by slacking it off, but it's such a pain. I'll find a spare one to duplicate or replicate for now. Yeah, there's quite a big increase in tension, as you can see by the fact that that string popped off. I'll just use a sacrificial string of a similar gauge for now to do the business, but I have a new set here ready to go. Now I know that the door is open. I know that the neck is sitting wonky for a minute, and I know that this height over here is much bigger than the height over there. But that notwithstanding, I'm going to try and kick off with all the saddles at a similar sort of setting. I don't want to. Let's assume that I'm going to be able to put that right. So, in which case, I don't want to sort of. What's the word? That's pretty tight. I don't want to compromise or accommodate. Yeah, I don't want to have to sort of compensate. Yeah, compensate by counter slanting the saddles. Now, if we couldn't get any better positioning on the bridge, sorry, the neck in the pocket, then maybe we would consider that. But right now, let's go back to an assumption that we can shim this into a healthy, normal sort of balance. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm just looking to get these ideally into a similar sort of position, similar sort of height spread across here. It's just by eye at the moment, really, more than anything else. So it gives me a better break angle on the strings, and it gets it off the deck, so I've got some movement either direction. Okay. Just looking at this visually, that's a bit different either side, so let's just crank that one up and then compensate with these. Okay, so you can see that having already broken one of the old strings, I'm now up against it, that I've got to find a duplicate sacrificial string, as I would call it, to allow me to do the setup work. Okay. Are you alright, madam? There are no mice in here today, they're all released into the wild. So you can either go out into the beautiful English summer, piddling with rain and blowing a gale, or you can stay in with me. Alright, so let's start by getting this dead thing off here and finding an alternative or replacement. Might have some. This one's a through body thing, which just now is probably going to be difficult because, well, it may be difficult. No, it's coming out. That's good. The core of the string comes out. Right, let's do a quick measure. I don't know what the actual diameter scale of this string is, but I've probably got a spare that will do the job some way. So it's, according to this, it's. Hello, Morris. 24. So I'll just switch it off. Hello. Can you come to inspect this sorry kit? You have a look and tell me what you think. What? I think it's your sister chasing something. You're wet. You are completely soaked. He's in his scrawny summer coat now, although he's looking a bit cold because it's not really summer, is it? End of June. June 30th. I'm not going to complain about the weather. I am in my new accepting mode where I love the weather, no matter what it's doing. Okay, 14, 42, 36, 32, did I say 24? I said 24. 16, oh no, 42, oh, it's like that but backwards. Okay, we're going to have to go for a used one from somewhere. Yeah, you just put your feet all over Richard's guitar. He won't mind. Right, Morris, find me some strings, lad. I want a 24 of some description. Now what I don't know is whether these things are shorty oak caster strings. Just before I started doing this one, I did another take of a video I've tried to make, which is like a YouTube intro video, because I realised that I'm not brilliant at stating clearly on my channel intro what it is that I do. And Morris doesn't do it. I thought he would do the marketing, but he just leaves me to get on with it and then criticises when it's wrong. Okay, this is a 24, so it'll do the job. Dead old one, but that's all I need. The question is, will it get to the tuning pegs, which is not guaranteed. Off you go. Go and play with your sister. Go on with you. Will it reach? Maybe. Oh, gold. Gold. It's like a steptoe and son. Gold arrowed. Arrow. Oh, come on. Morris, don't play with it just now. He's a good boy. Go on down. Go on down. Go on. Good boy. Let's clear off, mate. Right. We'll put our 24 in the hool, and it doesn't bleeding well reach. Oh, it's already been chopped for some other guitar that isn't anywhere near as long as that. Do you know, this is going to cost me a new string. Have I got any inside the house? No, I've got 10s with 24, custom 48. Is there a 24 in that set? I bet there isn't. Double 6. I've got double 6 set somewhere else. Where is it? Sorry, this is boring, I know. Just trying to figure out how I'm going to replace the string without wasting money and using a brand new one and ruining a whole set. That's a bass set. There's nothing in there, nothing there. And a spare double 6 set, which is exactly what I need. Could it be that I used them? I have a horrible feeling I did. Right, let's try one more that might be the right length. Well, I am guessing. I'm hoping. We'll see. Sorry, I should just let me stop this while I go and find the missing offending thing. So what it needs to be is a sacrificial string. Goodness gracious me. Come on. It's the green G, but it's got to be longer. Right, I'll see you in a minute. Hold on. Okay, we found one. Now normally I would shut the shed door at this point, but poor old Morris looks so forlorn. Okay, so we got that one just attached, but it's only barely attached, which means if I undo it or take the neck off, it's going to want to pop off. Okay, but it's quite loose anyway. Right, so I think I have roughly adjusticated. This is a little bit high, low, I don't know. I've just pretty much roughly kind of got myself a spread of saddles, seating, you know, the height of the saddles across the sorry, boring stuff. And I'm going to just now crack on with trying to figure out what we do next. So, the one thing that happens, I noticed, is that this string jumps off. Where the hell has it gone? It's not sitting at all. That's partly because it's not got the pressure of the retaining thing, so the slot isn't deep enough, the combination. Anyway, we'll worry about that later. So the first question I've got is, what the hell is wrong with this pocket? So for me that then means I've got to get the neck off, but that in turn means everything is going to try and come off and run away. So I'm going to do my best, which isn't ideal, but I'll do my best to secure everything in place with fairly tightly fixed capo. Now honestly, whether that is going to hold this stuff in place or not, I don't really know, but it will give us, we'll stand some chance of it. So this is a sort of exploratory move, and it's going to involve taking off the back plate and seeing what we've got under here. Now, what I haven't done actually, sorry, let's just before I change this forever, let's just do a quick measurement. I'm going to rub off all of that stuff on there. We'll do a quick measurement of important things so that we can kind of, I suppose we can gloat later on and see how much improved it is from where it currently is. But it also will help to tell us just how far out one side is from the other. So I'll get my measuring thing. So we've got currently, at the action that I want, it's currently sitting, they both sit at different heights, that's the thing. Why do they sit at such different heights in here? It could well be because this one isn't done up very tight. No, that's in its slot. Well, it will sit a bit lower once it's done up, but not a huge amount. Technically, you'd expect those to sit with the bottom parts being pretty much even. Anyway, we can't do anything about it right now because they're sitting on the same saddle and there's no independent adjustment of the parts in relation to each other. So there we are. Okay, so anyway, just let's go off the high one. So we've got a height of, yikes. I need a new one of these, it's getting a bit ropey to see. But it's over 5mm, so low E, 5mm at the last fret, and then the high E is currently sitting lower than that because of the strange positioning of the neck, but that's currently sitting at 2.5, let's call it high E. And we've also got a first fret action which is just way high. I mean, a quick look which, using this device, tells me it's a millimetre, pretty much all the way across. So 1mm first fret, and then while I put the capo back on, I can just check for what the last fret, sorry, what the neck relief looks like. So this is effectively, well, this is capoing the first fret, holding down the last, and there is some relief. It's sort of difficult to see with two strings, but it's actually not that much, but we'll leave it where it is for now, but it could warrant an adjustment later on. So having done that, I'm now going to attempt to undo this, and this is the point where I get to look under here and see why this thing, or try and work out why this thing is so out of shape. Now I'm conscious that this is fairly taut and that it's going to want to spring apart. I'm going to sort of keep it in its flat position until I'm ready for it to come upwards. And then the final one. Now, when it comes to putting it all back together again, once I've got the shimming to the point I want it, then we have a option to kind of push the neck side to side a little bit. So here we have the neck now wants to come upwards, which it does, and the strings are pretty good, they're going to stay on. We just gently pull this away. Now I can see that, I think maybe that Richard's put some, no, actually he's not. I thought he'd put some paint in there for some reason, but actually it's just a bit of off-cut from the ugly off-cut from the pick guard. Pick guard off-cut. Now that takes that away. Pick guard doesn't actually sit very well in terms of positioning on this horn here, but you can see that somebody's put this on and sort of cut away at this to make the neck sit back where it should, and in fact you could argue that this isn't sitting back where it should anyway. just looking at the position. I don't even know. I should have perhaps checked how well intonated it is. The one thing you don't want, whether it's intonated correctly or not, is you don't actually want the neck pressing only on a pick guard. So I'm going to finish the job here a little bit and allow this to just wear this away so that the neck ends up sitting against the wood on the wood. I mean, that, first of all, that's what you want for a better quality, better tighter joint, and therefore a sort of better sustain, I suppose, or better resonance of the guitar. So just a case of let's get this tailored to fit. Now, you know, it is fitted where it is, and these are screwed in where they are. You might say another day you'd go back in time and reposition it, but right now we've got what we've got. Now let's have just a feel. No matter what the screw positionings are doing, we don't want it just sitting against plastic. It's not good for it. Okay, so once we put it back in, we do have a bit of leeway side to side. So let's just look at the bottom of this thing. Just try and get a sense of whether this is in fact flat the way you would expect it to be, because something isn't sitting right. Now it could be, it's possible, I could be maligning this kit, and it might just be that Richard didn't get it quite in right before he screwed it in, but I'm not sure about that. I feel there's a bit of rock and roll going on in here, and short of having kind of computer guided machinery, I don't have the means to kind of check this for an absolute level other than by sort of slightly sort of common sense means. Now what I can see is, if I were to shine a bright light, I can see, I have got a bright light over there, I can see a gap, which means there is a sort of slight gap at the front. The question is what have we got going across here? And we do have what looks expressly like two different thicknesses here. I mean, that's your first thing. Wow. I'll take a picture of this so that Richard can see it. If I spin it around to you, you can see it's not I mean, it's encouraging in one way that it's not the neck that's sitting wonky, it's the neck is actually cut, the heel is cut wrong. I don't know whether that's been sanded incorrectly or what, but you can see it's thicker on this side than it is on that side. So I'll take a picture of it just sort of before I do anything to it, because providing we've got a flat bottom in there, then really we want a flat bottom in here that matches. So I'm going to try and get this as straight on the end as possible. Now I'm looking, what I want to make sure is that I'm trying to identify that it isn't the case that the fingerboard is a different thickness on either side, in which case I'll just measure it with my little calipers, because this may be what's happened with this kit. So let's just give you an example. If I go to the very edge, let's do it in millimeters, and I'll draw it on the board actually. Sorry, this doesn't make great TV, does it? Right, let's draw it. There's the thingy, there's the fingerboard going across, and then we're looking at the end which says 1, 3, 4, end on. So clear that to 0 please, and we go right just behind the curve, and we'll take it just to the edge, and we'll go 26, 21, and that's on this outside edge. So that's top edge to bottom, 26, 21, and then we go, we go top edge to bottom, and we go 25, 18. So we're a millimetre out. 25, 18, which is why it's not sitting properly. Now what I just want to, I hope it's a difference in the maple on this part. I don't want it to be a difference in thickness of the fingerboard itself, because that would be a pain. So let me measure. I mean, the bottom line is when all said and done, it adds up to a thicker piece wherever the thickness comes from, so we're going to have to readjust. But let's just try and see what we've got. So here we have got 20.94 in the maple, 20.94, and here, quite heavy, here we've got this is the opposite way round, so it's slightly less on the maple but slightly more on the, if I can find the line that it follows. Yeah, but no, it's about the same. So what I'm seeing is 20.94. What I'm seeing is it's in the fingerboard. Sorry, the fingerboard is going to be the difference, which is not ideal really. But we still have to make the adjustment or compensation. This is a little bit harder to gauge because we don't have such a clear-cut edge to measure from. It depends, because it sort of folds over a bit. I'm going to go from the first fret, sorry, the second to last fret. I'm going to go from right where that little fill starts, and I'm going to call it, let's say 5.38 on that side. Let's draw it on here. So this bit here is 5.38, and then we're expecting this other side to be quite a lot less then, and I can see that's what it looks like. Sorry about this getting in your way. Go to the same place and dial it in, and we've got what I would call, yeah, we're about 2 millimeters off. That's where it's gone. Actually no, 1. That's where it's gone from the fingerboard. Hello you. So 4.01 roughly. So it's about, we were about 1.2 on either side. So what do I call it? 4.01. Okay, so there we have the diagnosis of diagnoses. Yes sir. Do you agree? Is that non-standard for you? Yeah, okay. Okay, would you like to go down so that I can get on with what I'm doing, my handsome wet chappy? Yeah. He's such a boy. Come on then. Let's put you down here. Come down here on the. You can't do your paw cleaning. Come on, you. You've got to take you off here because I'm working. But you can have this nice stool to sit on. In fact, I'll shut the door a bit so you can stay nice and warm and cosy. You don't need to go out. You can sit there. Good boy. Stay there. No. I can't think while he's doing this. I'll have to try. Okie dokie, we have the same thickness of maple, but we've got an increase in thickness of, sorry, decrease in thickness of the maple fingerboard on one side, and down this side appears to be the same. This side it just gets thinner. Oh looks, it's worrying me a little bit. So, okay, that we've got what we've got. You'd think that would suggest there's a twist. If they're both, if that's actually thinner and that's fatter, you'd get a bit of a twist as you go down this whole neck. But we can live with that, that's not a problem. Okay, so we have a thing that's too thick on that end, too thick. Now, we can either shim it, we've got to shim it on the end, and we can then shim it upwards as well. And I think I would prefer to do that than to start working away on the neck itself to try and counteract a built-in problem. No, Morris, don't put your nose on that. Last time you did that, you couldn't see anything for weeks afterwards. Come on, come on here. Here's a nice, here, have this to sit on, especially for you. There, that, ooh, lovely. Make your nest in there. Or if you like, why don't you have my lovely warm, yeah, look, Morris, look. Yeah, Morris, come here. You can have his master's special warm jacket. Or you can push your way out and stay out. Go on, out you go. Next time you come in. Okay, so right, we kind of know what's wrong. We're thicker here than we are there, and the reason being there's more fingerboard maple there than there is there, which means technically, whilst this thins down, then the fingerboard must go like that a bit towards the end. But in a way, that's the least of our worries. What we're going to need to do is we're going to need to shim this to lift the end up, and we're going to need to shim the other side to kick up the side. It's not going to be the greatest of, I don't know what the word is, I prefer not to have to use a shim unless absolutely necessary, but this is going to be absolutely necessary. And then we're going to, so we'll need one to kick up at the back, and we'll also need then one to kick up on the side, which probably doesn't need to be quite as big, but it needs to have a hole that clears. I'm just going to see if I can make do with something that's already here. We'll see. Once I put it back on, we'll just see how badly wrong it is. But I'll start with a hole, utilising something with a hole drilled in it, so I can kind of work around it, basically with the view to being able to just put the neck bolt straight back through it. So there you go. That could be our upwards kick. We don't want it to be too huge, but it will. Any shim you use, you will create effectively an air gap underneath. You know, because it's going to lift the wood from the wood, so that they aren't in direct contact anymore. And that's just, I'm afraid, that's the way it's got to be. So what we can do is we can just have a look, and we can take that kick up just as a sort of an example to look at. That's difficult to, I've just poked copper into my finger. Yeah, go on, sit on that nice warm thing, you. So we can basically look across here and just quickly get a view, and it's actually it's a sort of a one-for-one effect, because it's sitting right there. If this is a millimetre low, 1 millimetre will kick it up the correct amount, and actually it's a little bit less than it needs to be. So we could boost that now with this back kicker, which is going to lift the whole thing up. This will lift the whole thing up, but I will place one on top of the other. Now this makes quite a big sort of what's the word? Additive, you know, compound thing. So we've got an upward push shim as well as a upward as well as a sideward. So, and it's all a bit loose at the moment, so it'll just be a kind of a matter of getting an eyeball on it and seeing. Okay, so that makes a too big an upwards push right now. Well, hang on, let's just wait a minute. It's not. Yeah, that's too high a kick. So what we're going to look for is, we've got that adds an upward push, but it also adds another push in that. It's lifting both upwards and sideways, obviously. So I'm just going to cut a small piece of this tin, and I'm going to use that as a start point. So again, if we can leave the side push, the side shim out for a minute. This is this tin wants to chase the pickups because it's magnetic. Well, no, the pickups are attracting the bits of tin that I'm putting in there. But there's two little thin things. They're about 0.3 of a millimetre each. So effectively we're doing a 0.6 millimetre lift. Now, without pushing this all together as hard as I can. Now, first thing that's striking me is that I'm just imagining this, or didn't that want to go in cleanly? That could be one of our initial problems. Let's just get another feel for this, because this isn't really fitting. It could be that partly this isn't sitting in and going right into sitting all the way into its place in the first place. Okay. Now Let's come off the thing. Thank you. Get that right to flat. Okay. So it's not too tight, that's okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back with these two, and then just, it may be just for the purpose of testing this out that I have actually got to screw this partly together again, because it's kind of impossible. Let's just leave it dangle for a minute. It's kind of impossible to do too much just by holding it, because you really can't see. So it probably pays off to hoist this up, keep it in place with my hand, and then just feed one of these into it for a minute. I'm just really concerned only on the height lift at the moment at the front. It's not going to be perfectly aligned the way I'd want to do it at the end, but it's just going to hold it in place for a second so we can see the impact that shim makes on what we've got. So it's the front and the back pulled tight, and we've now got that action down to a fairly respectable, more respectable, about 3. So it's dropped, those 2 bits of tin have done made the shim drop down, but you can see that the movement of this neck is just awful. I mean, it's all over the place. I'm going to take a bit more slack off here without losing the string, so I can. Give me a little bit more movement. Okay. Oh, he's settled. That's good. So positioning, I won't worry about the side to side. So right now the positioning is wrong, but in terms of action height, we could kind of live with that. And I'm just looking at this now, and we're still definitely tilted up wrong on one side. So we could go for a similar lift using tin on the other side. But again, the problem of a shim is if you've got one lifting on the back and you put one on there, then you get a 3-way lift. You don't just get the side lift. We could try doing that by making a complete right angle. I'm not sure how well that would work, but let me just get a little bit of tin for starters. Starter for tin. Alright Morris, you don't have to run away. You can do that. Let's cut a couple of little pieces to see if it will do the job. Scratchy bits of copper. Okay, so I now want to lift up this base end. I'm just going to look at it. I'll tell you what's throwing this off is that the pickup is screwed in incorrect, well, screwed down unevenly to begin with, so that's all a bit weird and wonderful. So let's just drop that down out of the way for a minute to as close to a level as we can get it. Looks about right. Okay, so we still do need to lift up this end, so it's the base end of things. Now, technically speaking, we could probably, no, we can't leave those in because we've got to get this flat again. Take those off, yawn, just keep them somewhere close to hand. Back to the start. So we've got our 2 bits of tin there, and now we could just look at a straight lift on the left hand side of a similar amount. Now it's just a trial and error thing here, because to be honest I don't know what the best position for this is going to be, and if we get it right, roughly right, approximately right, then what I'll need to do is stick the pieces in place so that they stay where I want them to stay. So in each case this goes in, but it doesn't want to sit where I would ideally want it to sit. So I can start with the bottom left corner. That's the sort of anchor point. Now, this positioning of this neck has got to go way off in this direction. Wow, it's really grim. You need a fair old bit of push when it comes to it to get this in place. But anyway, I'll worry about the exact side-to-side positioning in a minute. Let's just sort of get this lined up roughly. More interested in the height than the actual side-to-side, but I'll give it a little bit of a push to help it. Now, there we go for a minute. Okay, so yeah, it's better, but it's still technically a little high. But let me do these up for a minute and I'll see whether we've got the wherewithal to just make the adjustment now with the saddle, because in a way it might just be a very small adjustment to get it right now. We'll see. I think the main thing is just to see what it's telling us about the relative height of this. Now that looks straight for once. Now in terms of coming downwards, I wanted to see what it would take to get it to the playing action that I'd want, and how big a difference it would make on this break angle here to get down to that playing action. If it's too great, if too much of a slack off on the break angle, then obviously I'm going to go back and add a bit more shimming material, and it may be that I just replace all these bits of tin in a second with some copper. I've got a couple of different gauges, so I'm just getting a feel for this. So on a 12 string I'd be comfortable with 2mm here, but we should have a bit less than that really. Okay, so that's, to be honest, that's still too high, and the break angle is too slack or too weak for my liking. So I'm not going to compromise by going further down with that thing for the saddle height. In fact, if anything, just looking at this, I think we probably need to go a tiny bit the other way, and we'll overcompensate. We'll overcompensate with, make up for it with the shim thickness. But in terms of positioning, what I've kind of discovered now is that I can see where the positioning will be for the shims. The two I cut work. They're not perfect, but they sit in the right place, and they're either side. They avoid the holes, so that's good. So we can just kind of use that positioning as our guide. Keep just going up until I get a nice radius curve across here, make the others match. So you can see how it's all a little bit fiddly and annoying. Ideally you'd want a neck pocket that fits better than this one, but we've got what you've got, so we've got to make it work. It just means that if you ever take the neck off again, Richard, to do anything to it, you'd need to make sure, I think I mentioned this to you anyway yesterday, but you'd need to make sure you get that the shims are in the same place. But I can hopefully go some way towards that by sticking them in the right place. I might use my special Gorilla Glue when it comes to it. So I'm actually adding some more height to these saddles rather than less, because I I didn't like wasn't happy with the break angle of the strings, so I'd rather go a bit higher. Okay, so we're now working off this, which is still quite a shim required. Got slack. Now I can measure the two. The two shims we've currently got together, and then replace with something that works better. But I know where the position of them are. So I know where they're positioned. So let's get those off. We also know that with a bit of push over to one side, we get the neck in the position that we ideally want it. So okay, so there's our. Oh, one of them's gone flying. Our two shims were originally there and there, little L shape. Now between them they've got a bit of they don't sit exactly flat on each other, but we'll just pull them out and just measure roughly where they're at in terms of thickness. So we got 1/2 millimetre there, so we can go up with some copper to a different size. There's some stuff that isn't quite as thick as that. Where's it gone? Anybody? One piece, there's another piece. That's thick, that's thin. Alright. Hello. So that was 0.5, wasn't it? 0.5, and this is 0.79, which feels about right actually. So I've now put them down and lost them. Okay, there they are. So I'm going to cut two pieces the same, since it seemed to work. Cut a long piece at the 0.75-ish. Yeah, let's do that. Let's cut along a bit. So one of these, not two, but I'll get this in the vise for a minute. Come on everybody. Not quite enough room anywhere. Right. Okay, so we'll get one of these there, because we only need one. One of those for the backwards lift, and then I'll go with a smaller piece because it seemed to work quite well. Again, it doesn't have to be millimetre perfect, but just close enough. Take that off about there. So those can go away, and these can go here. Now I've made that one slightly longer. Why do I make it slightly longer? Because I want the whole side to lift up. That was my theory. So that's there, safely out of the way of the hole, and that's there. Okay, so there's my effectively increased shim, and that should lift us up much closer. Hopefully, if it's not entirely enough, then we've only got one other thickness available to play with, but you know, we'll see. Yeah, that's close. That's close. Okay, so I'm going to go with. But if this works, I don't really need to do anything. Actually, do I? Yeah. Technically speaking, I ought to make sure it's there. Let's have a look. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Happy with that. Okay, I'm going to live with those, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just claw around them first, just so that Richard can see where they live in future times. And I'll put the word back on here, and then side on here. will get my bit of Gorilla Glue out and see what happens. It's just now rubbed off the wording. There we go. So back shim goes into place there, and side shim goes into place kind of there. Push it out of the way for a second. Okay, glue of the gorillas. Where? That's a good question. Where the goodness gracious did I put the glue of the gorillas? I'll put the glue in here somewhere. Yeah, let's do a quick dig in this pile. So in a way, well, not in a way, you can see already that before we even get into any of the kind of proper setup, well, this is proper setup, but before we get to really making anything that much better, this is remedial stuff, you know, and it's, I don't know how long it's taken now. We've been at it something like an hour or something, just to get this balanced up correctly. I don't know where my blade has gone, so I'm using my thumbnail, which is not working very well. Yeah, so it's remedial work thanks to G4M music people and their quality control. Oh, this is, where's my knife? Damn it. Never keep track of my knife blades. Okay, so I'm going to use a bit of this stuff. Needs no, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to use that. That stuff requires water to make it work, and then that expands. So I'll use a viscous thick, yeah, viscous super glue. I'll do my best with that. Hard to handle when you've got fat fingers and not a lot of space. Get in there, stay in there. Obviously that will pull tight in once we put the whole thing under load. Squash this flat again. Give it the best chance of sticking as possible. There are times when a cocktail stick just isn't the thing you need, and this is one of them. Okay, so there's my preferred positioning in both cases. Let's get this out of the way. Get that squished under pressure, dum 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 dum, and hopefully cranked over into the straightest position and the best in line alignment that we can get. Now obviously we want to push this down first into place, and then we'll put the first lower one on, and then we'll use that as the pivot to swing the other ones around. Get in there. The anchor point, and then we want to push it this way whilst doing up the other one in the opposite corner, so that's ready to kind of drive in, but we will need a bit of a mixture of in and down. So I'm going to push this against the blimey, it's quite a way off. Get it in, and difficult to pull it this way and push it and screw. You know, it's like slightly missing one hand. Anyone? So let's get it as close as we can to the biting point. are. Let's push this one down there, and now let's get it on. Quick look at it, position wires. Quick look at it, position wise, it's nicely aligned. So without further ado, I'm going to send all these other ones into their position, and then we'll tighten by hand. Okay. So it's interesting that the position, the alignment of the neck on a guitar like this is held, held in position by those screws, which I try when I make my own oak casters, for example. I do my very best to avoid that, so that the neck pocket itself is accurate enough to hold the neck exactly where you want it, and you don't have to sort of do all this pushing and pulling so that it sits slightly off, and you're sort of relying on the force of these 4 screws to hold it in the correct alignment so the strings are in the right place, which is not ideal. Okay, so pleasant success. We have a neck that not perfect but is much more balanced. We can counter any tiny differences with the lie of the lie of the saddles. Okay, so now we can put a bit of load onto it, because we want the strings at this point to sit fairly tidily. Just basically looking at find where everything is supposed to be located, because right now some of these strings are out of line, out of whack. Yeah, quite a few of them are actually. They've dropped. Where the hell are they supposed to sit? I haven't got my ultrasonic specs on, but here we have. Sit these up on their saddles. Okay, and that one has fallen off there because it doesn't want to sit, the slot isn't deep enough, because when you get to the D string and the G and the D, they're pulling sideways, so the slot isn't strong enough to hold them in place, which means that right now, until I adjust the slots even more than that, I know Richard's already done some of that, but until I adjust them more, they're going to fly off sideways. So the thing I need to do is to get the basic strings on this into a tuned state, and I'm just trying to make sure that everything's in its proper position. So take a note from somewhere. Now something's buzzing down here. Okay, that means we're currently grounding out on that one. Let's just take a look at it. Are we? No, it's playing. Blimey. Now what I don't ever know on these damn things What I don't know on this thing is, where's that supposed to sit? Well, that's got to be out of that's out of position for a start. Damn. And I also don't know which note is which, so I'm going to have to guess it. So I don't have a tuner that tells me. Thank you. Go into your correct position. That's in position. That isn't. Oh, looks. Everything's out of place. See how much fun this is. Okay, that's jumped off because the slot isn't correct. That's coming to one side of it, which is there. Right. So we're not quite there yet, but no, we're not there at all. But I've got to find a note now that keeps me happy. Oh, lorks. And a plectrum. So you see how fiddly this is? But at least it's in the right position. A bit high still, but we can take that down. I've lost the note now. So the first thing we've got is we're getting nearer to the action. Now I'm going to do a tweak. I'm going to put the capo back on because I know that the nut action is way too high still. Don't need so much force on it this time, so just need to hold it down. And I'm looking at the action down at this end, and I'm going to check it visually and measure it. We can say, okay, on the low, well, let's go with the lowest string because we've got quite a height difference. We'll go with the lowest string. We go, right, we're on 2. Let's drop it down, and then I'm going to take this one down, and I'm going to take the others down across the way to just match it up, and then we'll see what we've got. Then, oh lorks, if I could just get this thing in here, fiddlesome. Okay, so back it off, counterclockwise, counterclockwise, swivels off to the side. Again, just check it. That's 2, just over 2, so I'll go down a little bit more. But I want 2 on the fat string. I'm not sure if they're always as far vertically separated as this. I'm not a 12 string expert by any means. Maybe they are meant to be like that. It seems quite a spread of height. I know they should. I would have thought the bottoms should have touched, if you excuse my language. Okay, so that's just over 2 again. We'll go down a fraction more. We'll just aim for 2 on the fat string at the last fret, and then everything else just kind of copy its way across, and just see how this looks and feels. Because you know we now have the luxury of not adjusting the shim any further because we've glued it in place. We know it's within the range that we can make kind of tailored alterations now here, and that's feeling good. said Muse. Here, down we go. Down, 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 up, 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 and a little bit. Take it down a little bit more here. Now these are both on the same level, so you might not want to go quite so far down. Okay, visual check. Now retune. Oh, that won't work, will it? Not ready yet. You can see we're slowly getting there. Obviously we've got a bit of height to lose down that end. The action here on the low, the thin string is 1.75, but when we lower this action down here it's about 1.5, so it's a tiny little bit different. This is going to, like I say, this is going to be lower, so let's just take it down to where it would be. That's it. Bit more power on the capo, please. Just want it to hold steady. So I'm just trying to get a feel of when the action is down on the nut slots, what it will feel like to play. So let's just get this, try and get it in tune. We'll get there. Right, I'm not really interested in the tuning. The strings purpose at the moment is only sacrificial, but now we've got it so that the saddles are kind of up in a nice, pretty much horizontal, slightly tilted forward. I mean, it means we could put a bigger shim in, but I'm going to live with what we've got because I think it's enough to work with. And we've got a reasonable playing action at the last fret, about 2mm on the fat strings, a little bit less on the thin strings. The 2 on the fat ones is pretty good. Yeah, dead on 2 on the chunky ones out of the set, and obviously probably a little bit lower as we go around, 1.75 over the top there. So it's getting in tune is a nightmare right now. obviously. I could do it probably better with a plug-in tuner. Oh yes, yes, that's one that Richard will know. Let's find a strap. Played it before on a 12 string in here, so please, if you remember the last 12 string I did, 12 string electric, which was the Ace Pro jobby. You'll remember me boring you to death with this one as well, but just as a little taster for Richard, who's not heard this guitar play at all, far less. Oh, bloody hell. Okay, that's another slight problem. Neck heavy. I wonder if we can fix that in some way. Let's get off. Okay, let's see what we've got. Neck heavy, right. Sort of Genesis-y sound. Blimey, on and off. Can we go sharp? No, we can't. Let's go flat. Wired back to front. Could be wrong. No, I'm not wrong. Yeah, back to front. off tone. Out of phase in the middle. Kind of explosive tone. Anyway, yeah, so we're getting there, It plays, Richard. Not in my hands, it doesn't. Tuning feels a bit ropey still, but that's because we've got to really do the tuning, stretching thoroughly, and there's too much string on all of these pots, tuning pegs and stuff. So, but we're on our way, we're on our way to getting something that works. Hurrah. So let me just get this undone, and we can continue. Woohoo! Right, so, blimey, okay. Progress. Now the hard bit, or the fiddly bit, comes any minute now, which is the 12 nut slot adjustments. Oh god. Right, let's just put all this spare copper in this spare copper box for a minute. We don't need. Right, there's my blade missing, you know. Okay, so look, we've got ourselves a action at this end that plays. The strings are not in tune because I guess pull them and they'll probably go out of tune quickly. Yeah, so there's too much slack in them. But we'll worry about that part of it towards the end. Wiring's back to front, but that's okay. It's sort of a unique thing. I've lowered the front pickup so I can bring that back up later on. But we've got an action that I can live with. We could add a little bit in there if we wanted to, but it's not essential for now. But we can work to this kind of action. Now, the interesting bit up here is we've still got a high-ish action over the first fret. Now, I would still want to go for my preferred 0.3 to make this guitar. In a way, 12 strings of all guitars need to be light to play. They need to be light to play, and the reason why is, of course, you've got such a big handful that if it's heavy at this end as well as harder at that end, then you struggle a bit. Now what I'm seeing here is these are kind of deliberately different heights, so honestly, do I know what the difference is between these in height? They're different in height at this end for sure. That one's off its mark, which isn't going to help things much, but they are logs. Right. Okay, the reason that's coming off, jumping off its little peg, you can hear it. Right, all that horribly out of tune. Yeah, so we've got a differential here in the height of these things, and I guess I'm going to have to measure the difference between the two if I can. and see if I can recreate it at this end. By the way, your strap buttons are falling off a bit. We'll sort that out as well. See if we can check the difference between the two without putting too much pressure on it. It's, blimey, according to this, it's 1.6 millimeters from top to bottom. It's quite a lot. Is it really that much? Maybe it is. Yeah, actually, fair dues. I'm measuring from top to top. They reckon there's 1.6 millimeters difference, which would be pretty impossible to replicate at this end. Let's see what we can find out. Where they're sitting at the moment, we'll divide the difference between them here. So let's work out what this one is first with a combination of bits and pieces. So let's go to 0.9 for fun. We're working off the low one to begin with. Obviously the same size ones will be at the same height as each other. Okay, that's going to be over a millimeter. So let's go, that's 80. Let's try 90 first before we get to the millimeter. Okay, call it, let's have a look. I'll draw it up on here. We'll go small one, and we'll go currently 0.85, and the high one, the tall one, is going to be obviously higher. Let's go over and see if we can get over the, so we'll go, what's this then, 1.05, let's try 1.05, just listen for that E, nope, so 1.05 is too much, well, it was 8.5, so we've got to go for something like 90, again, let's try 90.9 I should say. If it turns out they're actually at the same height, it's just the tops that are different, then that might be what Richard's actually set on here. Just having a look. Yeah, so they changed down here, but actually what would that mean? Not a lot. Okay, it looks like they're set at the same height here, which is fine. So we know they're about 0.85, which is, let's go for a 0.4 as a safe conservative estimate. Okay, so it means I've got to take a little bit off all of these. Now, to do that, I've got to also figure out, using my new pack, I've got to get myself a set of strings ready for the sequence. Sorry, a set of files ready for the sequence. And I'm going to go above everything. So, hey, 9s go to 11s, so there's my 9s. 12s will go to, I'm going to have to go to 17 on here, 12 to 17. Then we go 20, which is going to have to go to 20, I think 28 to be on the safe side. And then we're going to go 26 to 32. Always a bit above. Actually 26 to 32 could be 36, but let's try 32. I'll find it. There we go, 26 to 32. What have we got on the side of it? We've got an 11, 13, 14, 15, 16. Have we got 16? I don't think we have. Oh, we do. Let's go 16 instead of 17. So we go 11, 16, 11, 16. We go on the wound side 28, then we go 32, then we're going to 42, 48. 42, 48. So in a sense, that's my complete set. I'll need to reuse, work it out as I go through which ones I reuse. So, as always, I'm going to drop off the first lot off the sides, and I'll work from the D outwards. And like I say, we're going for a 0.4 all the way, so wrong one. Need them to be roughly in tune. So I'll take off everything but the one I'm working on to this side of it. There we go. So we are working, right, this is the thick one of the D, the thick of the D, which will be 32. Okay, 32, and we're taking it down to 40, 32 down to 40. So you've really got to keep an eye on this at this stage here, and tilting slightly backwards. So the 32 cut down to 40, well, 0.4 I should say, and I want a nice clean slot that's going to hold the string. You feel it's still loads of room for it to between the bottom of the string. Oh, I hate those things. There's something about a 12 string that's just waiting to stab you. So many little bloody spikes sticking out. Have to be really careful, unlike what I just did. Now with a 12 string nut, obviously you've got to be careful, because if you get this wrong, you're into sort of repair territory, as opposed to I could make a custom one, but I don't have a 12 string nut here. But a custom nut, I'll stop there on that one. A custom nut on a 12 string, cutting the slot positions is really tricky, because they're obviously, it's hard enough doing 6 and getting them cut freehand, drawing them. I haven't got a marker thing. I think that's the correct. Oh, is that the octave? Okay, well, I'm going to go with. Oh, hello. I'm going to go with. This one will be. We're talking a 12 here, which will be 16 on here. So I'm going to take this down to 0.4. Now we're just basically repeating that, or stepping across from one side to another, doing this slight adjustment, avoiding getting my fingers cut. Now obviously this will, when we get a bit of pressure on here, it will slightly change the way it sits, but if anything it will just lift it slightly higher, so shouldn't do any harm to what we've set. So again, just cutting the slot with a backward tilt and just a gentle approach. And I'm looking to keep going until the point where the string just touches, starts to fizzle on the feeler gauge, which isn't yet. For this to be accurate, you want to make sure that the string is as close to pitch as you can get it, so that there's no chance of it catching halfway down the slot. I think I'll stop there with that one. I'll just double check. There's a bit of fresh air. Oh, come on, don't be cowardly. I don't want to get it wrong though. I'll stop there. I'm good with that. Okay, so the next one is the A. You can see how fiddly this is. I'll make sure it's in the right slot. And again, those are the one I just done there was the one that's under the most force, along with the A. Sorry, the D and the G are pulling sideways, so they're the ones that tend to pop out. Okay, so now on this, I look at my thing here, and I'm going 36, which is 42 on my reckoning. The reason I go over size is because I want these strings to go through this nut slot cleanly without any stickiness. And when you can get the slots cut in a way that the string passes through it with ease, you will get totally stable tuning, providing of course you do the other part of the equation, which is to pull out all the inherent slack in your strings before you start playing, or as much as you possibly can. When you get most of the slack out and you get the nut slot right, you have amazingly stable tuning. As Richard, you're going to find out when you get this back restrung with new strings and with the strings passing cleanly through the slots. Now the reason I went oversize on the slots is because I've found that if you go too size you run quite a strong risk of it binding. Like pretty much nearly there. Yeah, there's a strong risk of it binding, and as soon as it binds, that's your tuning stability gone for a Burton. Hello, sweetie. This has been hard work so far, but I've got the action sitting up. I've got a shim there and a shim there. We're at a decent level there. I've got playing action, and now I'm getting that sorted and getting there. Getting there. Good. Yeah, how's things in house? Cold. I've said I've stopped worrying about the weather. I'm accepting and
middle of winter.
Happy with it. That's me. On the mark. Right, next one. Oh yeah. Next one is this one. I don't know whether, I can never remember whether that's an octave. If it was an octave that would pop, wouldn't it? Yeah, it can't be an octave. Alright, let's not forget where I am. Right, we're now on the thingy of the thingy, so it's the A set, the thin one of the A, which is called 20 on here, which we're going to go 28. It seems like a big gap, but like I said, we're going for plenty of room, and at those sorts of measurements, you can choose a pretty big slot before you run into any problems. And of course, most guitars start out with a pretty hefty size slot, which is kind of understandable, because if you didn't have a fairly big sized gauge slot on your nut, then you would be restricting the player from changing strings, and you won't find many guitars that come out of the shop with a nut cut specifically to nines and nothing else, because your guitarists would go home and put tens on it and find it didn't play. It was binding and sticking and so on. Now this one is interesting. We're going to go a bit deeper into this slot here, and to do that, because it's starting to go deeper, I'm going to use just use this V notch file just to open up slightly the notch, because otherwise it's going to start gripping. And I'm just very careful when I do that not to take the height of it, or not take the slot too far down with the point of the jeweler's file. So we're getting there slowly. It's just I just use the triangular file just to ease out the shape of the notch a little bit. But it's important that we go back in with the right profile of the actual proper nut file, because that gives it a sort of rounded out bottom. Ooh. Getting there. But it's very precise amount of, very tiny clearances we're talking about when we do this, so it's all so easy to get wrong. You've just got to be very patient and take your time. Oh, I thought you brought me a mouse or something. Way! Fruits of the garden. Look at those beauties.
Very hard to grow.
So yeah, we have this fake, we have a pretend argument every year.
Especially in winter.
Don't complain about the weather. We're at one with the weather.
Oh, they're good.
Try one.
Slightly sharp, but good.
Yeah. They've taken all the goodness of our summer and converted it into blueness. Lush. Okay. Now we're on to the E and its buddy. I'm sure that isn't an octave, is it? It would be mad if it was. It's just the same note on a higher string for a different tone. Somebody tell me I'm wrong or right or wrong. We'll play it and see. Okay, so we're on the last pair, so let's get this bottom one off and go for the low E, which is quite close to the mark anyway. And we're going to go 48 with that and then 32 with the other one. 48 and 32, we'll have those out ready. So the 48, here we go. You can see the fresh air underneath the string and between the string and the feeler gauge. But the real telltale sign is that you can hear the note playing cleanly without touching the top of the feeler gauge. So that tells you you've got quite a big gap still to go. Nearly there. Now the thing to also note is when you're cutting quite low in a very serrated nut like this, we just got to be a little bit careful because we don't want to break the tooth between the two strings. It's a bit more possible than we'd like in some ways, because they're quite small bits of bone in between. But previously we didn't have enough to hold the strings in place, so we have to do this not only to get it to the right playing height, but also to ensure that the string stays in position. That would be improved with the retainer bar, which Richard can add at his leisure. I've got some, but I don't have one long enough to do that in one go. I could make one up pretty quickly, but he's got one in the case bag somewhere. Okay, so just taking this last E downwards, working on the 32 hundredths. Almost there. I quite like where it is. Just a gut feeling. They are an octave, it's just hard to hear. Right, now I'm going to drop off these top ones and we're going to work outwards from the G outwards. And again, the G, particularly on this, has got a very narrow, very shallow slot, so it tends to pop off like that quickest of all. So we'll take care of that. We'll start with this one here and we'll go back to where we are. G, 20 on the wound, and the thin one is a 9, which is an 11 here. So here we go. 11, and we can, the same principle, we're working off the 0.4, and this will just be enough to cut this down to let it seat better, so it won't run the risk of popping off so much. And it's really, that's almost all we're doing at this point. It's not so much about the height here, it's just about getting it down to a seating nicely in that slot, because it's got the furthest or the most forces pulling it to one side of all the strings, and therefore will easily pop off a shallow slot. Strange things you could never have imagined when you were young that you'd grow up saying on video every day. Popping off a shallow slot. Now this one too. Okay, so we're now on the G, which is a 20 wound, and so we're going to go 28 on this G, and that's going to really secure this in that slot compared to where it is right now. Get this one off the edge. Now, once I've got this action where I want it, I can get the action where I want it regardless of whether I'm achieving it through a bit more shimming or a bit more adjustment of the bridge. Those two things are kind of interchangeable in a way. They're more of a personal preference, or to do with the angles of strings and stuff, so I can adjust that if I want to. But once I've got this action set right now, then the real issue then for me is, do all these notes play cleanly, and does this guitar need fret leveling, or will it play as is? Now, because I tend to go for slightly higher actions on 12 strings, it may be that, like most acoustics, you can get this type of action that I'm choosing here out of this guitar without needing to level the frets, and only if something clearly stands out as choking or buzzing that really seriously obstructed will I sort of set about fret leveling it, because there's no point doing it if we don't need to. I mean, it would make the frets look a bit tidier, but we can polish those in other ways to make them look nicer. But if they're in good nick and they aren't unduly unlevel, uneven, then we don't need to do anything. Now, this string, like the A, is one that is sitting higher than it should, so when I do an adjustment to it, I do want to kind of double these two strings, sorry, I want to double check them and press them down to see what happens, as if we had the tensioner bar on there. We're almost on the mark there. Yeah, I'm going to stop on that one. It's good enough. So now we're on the B's, and they're both the same, but again, their tendency to pull sideways, so okay, so now we're going to go with the B's. They're both 9s and 12s, so we're down to the 11s and 16s on this thing here. So, oh, actually they're this. That's right. Yeah, what I'm talking about. So these two pairs, the pair here is 16. So we just work straight on with that, and then the next ones are 11. It's quite a tight little sticky slot, this one. So the first thing to do is kind of open it up a little bit, gives us a bit of room for the string to sit in it. See the shadow, carry on. The thinner the slot nut file gets, the harder it is to see what it's doing, and the easier it can become to overcut it, because it really is hard to track your progress. The slot is so narrow. You know, you can do a little bit of a kind of an opening up in both cases, just to give us that tiny bit of extra room to manoeuvre. And all it really means is that the file just moves a little bit smoother through the slot to do its work. But like I said before, you've got to be very careful you don't end up over digging the slot so it's too deep. Keep that angle good as well, because that's important, that the string comes up the back of the nut and launches off the front point of it. So you can see it's slow and patient more than anything at this stage. And in a way, although the eye can sometimes deceive and you want to stop, you can let the string and the feeler gauge tell you, because we've chosen that 0.4 as our kind of guide mark, and the string will hit it when it's too low. It will start to sizzle on it, if you like, so it will tell you pretty much right away when you're there, as long as you do it tiny bit by tiny bit. Kind of just about there. So I'm going to stop that one. I'm going to tune this one up to match. Where's my, oh god, wrong string. Okay, 16 again, tilted backwards, just gently goes. We're nearly there. I always say on these videos, this is like being in the last half a mile before you get home in your car. This is where you're likely to go wrong and have an accident, because you're in danger of letting your guard down or lapse of attention and you think you're home and dry. Now this, I wish I could break this thing, because I could really use to do with using the other end of this. I think I might just do it here. The problem with these files is they eventually run out. Well, there you go. That's good. They can eventually get worn out here. So you get one end of the file that you can't really use that normally. That gets stays sharp, and by breaking off the end that's in the way, the sort of unserrated bit, we can now get access to this bit for these slots, which is great. Destructive, I know. But now I've got to be very careful, because suddenly this thing will cut like nobody's business, because it's sort of brand new. And it's also trying to cut quickly. Now we're almost on the mark there, I can see it, so I'm just being really careful with its new cutting power. I think we're on the mark with that one. Stop right there. Put that in here. We'll definitely use that again at the broken edge, because I know it's new now. Now we have the 11. Similar sort of thing applies here. We could do worse than breaking this off at this point. In fact, I'm going to do that too. There's absolutely nothing terribly useful about that bit of the file. I'm just going to, there we are. So that now, need a bit further along. Hang on. but they're old files, and this just frees me up a bit more material, a bit of a fresh blade really. There you go, lovely. I'll just squeeze that bit up, make sure it's flat, as good as it will go. Okay, right, so now I'm going to do the final string, the E, which is a 9 or 11 as we're doing. And I'm going to just check it first, because it's probably quite low anyway, not far off. And then we'll, oh look at those, it feels absolutely brand new, that file. Ooh. Little lease of life there, tip that you can do. It seems counterintuitive to break the thing to get more life out of it, but you can see it's, well, I can feel it's like it's brand spanking new. And it's having to work it too hard which tends to lead to problems. So having a fresh blade at your disposal after a couple of years of using the same ones is a real boon. You just have to be conscious that it's new and powerful. Okay, we're almost there. I'm going to stop with that one and let's line up the next one. And check, big gap, and away we go. Chop, chop, chop. So slowly but surely. And then once we're there, the next decision, as I say, is to, can we play this without fret leveling? If so, then the next decision after that really will be, do we want to change the shims or add to the shims for a slight extra bit of thickness just to raise them up, which will allow us to change the position of the saddles basically and get a tiny bit better angle over the saddle fulcrums, or, if that's the right word, pivot point. And you know, that's really a case of, well, let's get it and play it with these old strings on a bit first and see before we make that decision. It won't be difficult. We just add some. I'm just going to stop there. Add some more, a little bit more tin shim. Already I can feel this playing so much better. Oh, we're not in tune, are we? One. Right, okay, we are getting there. Rattly things that need taken care of, but let's just get this pulled up a bit so we got a bit more, a bit closer to the pickups. Neck pickup. Sounds about right. We can raise this one a tiny bit. Okay, another one. It's funny that they're They're wired back to front, but we can live with that. So the thing that I probably want to do here, but may end up with a broken string, is to sort of stretch out the last bit of goo slack out of each of these strings, because that, ideally we'll do it with the new ones, but it's quite risky because with only one set, if you break one of these stretching it, you're kind of stuck looking for something in a hurry. Now what I want to do before anything else is I'm just stretching this a little bit. I'll plug it in, try and tune it again, excuse me, and then check the intonation, because that's one thing I don't know anything about on this. I wasn't 100% convinced it was right. Before I, okay, hold on, we're just jumping around in sequence here. Before I do that, I'm just going to take off these strap buttons, because I think we should have put the rubber on the kind of outside or something. So the rubber is designed to go between the buttony bit and the surface of the guitar. So what I'll do is I haven't got black ones, but I'll use some white ones for now. Strap button felts. We'll put these on between, where's my screwdriver? I'll put these on between the buttony thing and the body, like that, and then we'll do it back up nice and hard, solid. This hurts my hand doing that. Feel? This may be already warm, that's what I'm worried about, but failing that, if it is, then we'll have to revert to adding something to keep it in, either some poly filler, or some people put a bit of tape around. This has been glued into place, oh blimey, or something stuck to the finish. Anyway, I'm going to just put this, I suppose we could put this black one. I don't know where the other one went, but we'll leave the white one on the front and we'll put this black one on the back. So ideally it wants to be on that side. And it's sort of, its purpose is to kind of protect the body, but also then jam down and act as a sort of spring washer a little bit. That's as much as I can get it to do for a minute. You have to keep an eye on that though, Richard. If it does come undone while you're playing or something, undo it, put a little bit of polyfiller or something that will set, or no more nails, into the hole. Not too much, but then do it up into that as tight as you can go and leave it, and it will set itself around the screw. Or you can do a bit of plumber's tape, which will just thicken the thread of the screw up. There's a variety of ways, or you can find a slightly oversized screw to do it with, but what happens is you're on a sort of constant battle there if you do that. Ooh, lovely. So that all went out of tune because of how I pulled it. Let's try again. Losing track of which string I'm doing. it back. That pinging noise, tiny little pinging noise, means we've got to widen the nut slot slightly. We'll come back to that. Okay. Right, now the thing I'm just going to check quickly before we move on, I'm going to take a break in a second, no surprise. I'm going to check the intonation quickly to see if it's miles off or miles near. I don't know yet, but I'll just have a quick feel. So I'm going to take a string like a G, tune it. Oh God, where is it? And then fret it at the 12th. That's good. Very good. Okay. Alright, so it looks to me like the bottom three are too far forward. They're too short, which means we've got to pull the saddles back. coils. So what I'll do, let's just have a look at this. This should be a simple matter of pulling these back with a screwdriver. Haha, simple, he said. Watch this. Obviously going to just move backwards as I command. Yeah, right. Not the right piece. Let's find a better one. Oh look, there's a cup in here. What's that doing here? Let's drag these back a bit, all three of them. Obviously the note's going to go sharp as we do it. And then finally the E. Right, let's tune these. Still sharp. Pull it back some more. Long screwdriver. Not sure it really wants to be that far back, but we'll try, we'll see. That one keeps popping off its little clog. Stay on there, stay on there, stay on. Right. Oh, it's done it again. Why? No. Right. I don't know. This is it's probably to do with the brake angle going over the saddle here. It's not deep enough a slot. We might have to. It might be one of the reasons why we have to shim it a bit further. Showing sharp as well, still just slightly, so we're getting in the right direction. We have to just keep going a little bit. Trust what the notes are telling us. Trust the notes, they don't lie. It's not a familiar pattern that I would expect, I have to say. It's a little bit off the thing that I would expect. Let's have a This is quite good because this thing has a double, what appears to be a double intonation system. One allows they can move from each other. Which I'm going with the bigger strings for the moment. And then the other one may have to work. Shut up. Pretty much on. Close. Let's see what the high notes do. there. What I wanted to check was the intonation of these top ones again. We'll go with the G, sorry, the small strings. That's what I wanted to check, if I can find out where the hell they lie. Something out here. Go up, capo. Yeah, it's just about works on a 12 string. Nearly there. Fiddling for now. Okay, never quick in the shed. So you can see that what we've got is we've got the guitar finally playing the way it should. The strings on it are old and they're not stable for various reasons, but they're not playing, they're not staying in tune because they've got too much gunk wrapped around the, amongst other things, too much stuff wrapped around the pegs, posts. So that needs to be kind of cleared up and chucked away. Keep the strap on for the time being. So, but generally speaking, in principle that all works fine. This thing keeps dropping off. It's not comfortable sitting where it's sitting, so it needs, really needs a tighter angle theoretically needs an entire angle to hold it in, so it may be that it requires a bit of an extra shim. There was a couple of points where it creaked and I can't remember which strings it were, so we'll come back to those just for making sure we've got tuning stability. But other than that, it's looking good and it's feeling good. Now, the thing I'm going to just check now is, boringly, I think that's going to get away without fret leveling, so that's good. Right, I'm going to take a break. Won't do it on camera, but what I'll probably do is just increase the thickness of this shim, push it all back together again, and that means we can raise these saddles up a bit more, and with the result that this angle will be a little bit more over the nut, the thingamajig here, saddle here. Yeah, it's good. I'm happy with that. Okay, so I've given the frets a polish. I'm just going to go over the tuners and tighten up some of these tuning posts because they're very loose, or a lot of them are quite loose. So that's good to get them tightened up. And then we'll be ready to restring. Oh, I've got a little bit of sandpapering in the slots to do. I've filed the fret edges too because they were a bit sharp, so tidied that up a little bit. So hopefully all will be well shortly. Right. Yeah, sandpapery bit. So a bit of 600 and a little bit of flayed, and all I do when it comes to widening these things is get in there with the 600 and just go to the sides a little bit, and tempting not to go any lower if possible, just focusing on widening it really. Not easy to do, but you can sort of feel when it's away from the bottom of the slot, and you can just work on the edges side to side if you can. And then once we're down to the very, very fine ones, you just use the paper itself, doubled over, and with a bit of luck I'll just go into the top ones. And then I've lost the little container I had. I keep doing this. I keep finding a little top that I can use and then I throw it away. So I never end up having the one twice. So I want to put this in something and I've got nothing to put it in again. Yikes. Make a little container. Just lose it. I should velcro this onto the onto something so it doesn't go anywhere. So just before I put the strings on, I'm just going to put a tiny bit of graphite powder into each of these slots, missing completely most of the time. Doesn't matter because we can blow away the excess as long as it gets some in there. If you don't have graphite powder, you can use the lead of a soft pencil, which is of course graphite anyway. It does the same thing. Okay, won't worry about that for a minute. Oh, what actually I can do, Morris, just going to use the spray can, right? just for a second. That didn't really work. Right, I won't bother with that. I'll just chuck some in and leave it. The air wasn't supposed to blow all of it away, it's supposed to leave stuff in the slots, but it managed to get in there and blow it away. Anyway, yeah, so the secret is get it in there and leave the excess until you've got the strings in place, and that will trap some of it in there, no matter how messy it looks. Okay, so here's the fun part. Now we've got the pairs of strings, we've got the double six set as it's called, and I never quite work out, oh lorks, really don't quite understand how these piles all work. I think that's that. Blue, white, red, blue, white, red. Yeah, okay. What are we looking for? We're looking for pairs and pairs, matched pairs, aren't we? They are in adjacent pairs, that's what I'm hoping for. So the big one goes through the back. This isn't going to work with the bloody graphite again, is it? Ah. This, I'm presuming these are pairs together. It looks like it to me. Oh, yikes. Where's the hole for this? Come on, sucker. It's down the bottom and then practically impossible. Wow. Holy cow, that really is hard to get through to the right place. Okay, so we're going to go, let's just put this one on so we don't have it knocking about. So this time, when it comes to the stringing, I don't know if you can see this, Richard, my preferred technique, which was important, I think, technique, something like this is important to keep the amount of slack in your strings down to a minimum. So you put your string on, pull it taut, and then I pull it back a fret's worth plus a pinch, and then I wind on holding the tight string over the loose string, which goes round, and then as the spare string comes round the second time, we direct the held string underneath the stem that's sticking out, and then let that fall into the thingy. Okay, and then we go with our big E. So we're going onto there. Pull it tight, pull it back one and a bit. I've polished the frets with 2 different grades of fret rubber, which it's not a perfect polish, but it's not bad. It gives them a good clean up. Okay, there's our first 2. Make sure they're in place. And I get my little clippers so we can snip those off. Okay. Well, maybe I'll get them from here. Just don't want too much loose stuff sticking out in the way. Okay, so there's a nice tidy first pair of strings. So then we're going to go white pair, and we go thin and thick. How the hell we're going to get this one upwards from there, I don't know. Let's try with a curve on it. Will that work? Yay! Just about. And we come through the back on this A string. So we go thin one first. Again, all the way through, pull it taut into the slot, pull it back a fret and a pinch worth, fretting a finger, and then push held one under the loose one on the second time round, over the first time, under the second time. Now outside you can probably hear it's just blowing a gale. Sort of height of our beautiful summer that I'm not going to talk about. Here comes the A, same thing, pull back, wind on. Ow. I was thinking today, having a sort of Facebook chat with, or conversation with my friend Mark, and I've been listening to a couple of guitar podcasts recently, in particular one called No Guitar is Safe or something like that. Anyway, it's an American one, but I like the guy, and I don't know much about him, I haven't researched him yet, but it seems like he's a pretty well-known, well-respected player, and he plays with some fairly big people, but he also goes around and interviews some fair old well-known names and jams with them. He's got a very nice approach, and I really like the way he shares the playing experience with people. It's not egotistical, they really enjoy whatever they're doing together, and it's more inspiring than it is intimidating, which is nice for a change. It feels like it's done with a generosity of spirit. But anyway, but I have to say there aren't that many that have that kind of quality, and I really liked it. Too many of them seem to be a bunch of sort of spotty kids talking about pedals and stuff, and you know, I don't know, just there's no. They're characterised mostly by nobody playing a note. Maybe because they're too nervous to do it or something, and so they don't, and they just talk about kit, and it just doesn't feel like it inspires you to do with anything to do with music, just buying stuff. But anyway, this guy on this podcast really does get into it. But anyway, it got me thinking about podcasting, because I've always done it in one form or other about one subject or other, and slightly different. An aside, I've been every now and then I look at something online to try and understand how scales work, basically, and because I'm a sort of play by ear type player, and as a result I'm not great, and I'm fairly limited in what I can do. I enjoy music, and I like to improvise by ear as much as I can. But of course, you know, I recognise there are limits to what you can do if you don't have a lot of or don't have some of the theory understanding. Anyway, the point about that is that I keep going to the web and trying to find a resource to learn from. So I look at, you know, I search for something like beginners or scales made simple, or you know, music theory or guitar scales explained, blah 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 blah. And what I keep finding is millions of people who seem to think they're great at it, and there are absolutely tons of sites, everybody teaching you this stuff, and you know, I'll show you in 5 minutes with these easy diagrams and this chart and that system and whatever. And anyway, so I keep trying, like I sort of spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever trying to work out what's being told to me on these sites or these pages or whatever, and each time I get 5-10 minutes into it, or however far I can get, and I run out. There's a point where it loses me, and I sort of did it again today, and you know, the guy doing the system or whatever, the teacher, you know, no doubt very well meaning and everything, and absolutely confident that he knows all about scales and how it all works, and absolutely supremely confident that he can teach it to me, and he'll be the one who can make it make sense to me. And 10 minutes later I'm lost, going, no, you just introduced your diagram here introduces a whole bunch of symbols and letterings and concepts that you don't even explain, and yet again you've assumed that somebody knows what you know, and you haven't stopped to question whether you've kind of gone ahead and used a concept without explaining it, without even thinking whether you've explained it or not, and so I'm lost again, and it doesn't make any sense. And so yet again I go away thinking, how the hell is this ever going to make any sense to me? And I'd love to know, because I would love to play the blues and feel capable of improvising and going off on a fun solo and so on and so on. And I now can do it a little bit, but I'm very clumsy, and it is purely by ear. So I recognise that's not very satisfying for me, far less the audience, should there be one. Anyway, so I stopped and sort of reflected on this, and the truth is I've seen it and experienced it so many times, and I stopped to think about literally how many times and how much time I'd spent throughout my history looking at these systems and then being just completely baffled and falling out the other end, annoyed that I'd spent another 20 minutes or half an hour or 10 minutes desperately trying to work out what the hell was going on and failing yet again to work it out. And I just thought, I bet you there are loads more people like me. And you know the thing when somebody you're on a page, like a blues guitar page or something, and some clever, very cocky guitarist, thinks they're fantastic, and anyway they come on and they very generously decide that they're going to teach you all their system, and they put up a set of videos they've just made, and they want you to be very grateful for it, and they're going to release all these episodes for you and teach you for free, and that's sort of on one level it's fantastic. But how many times have you got 5 minutes into it and you've just gone, no, yet again I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. You assume something, that you kind of act as though I know something that I don't, and you've lost me, and it isn't making sense whether you want it to or not. It isn't making sense, and as a result I can't do anything with it. And I'm not somebody who's going to sit and play a shape just because you tell me to sit and play a shape. I need to understand how that shape relates to chords or the music or the key, or I want to know what's going on. I don't just want to dumbly practice something until some time that you, like Scientology, you're going to reveal to me the true secret later on once I've invested thousands of hours, or the true secret will come to me in a flash of enlightenment on the top of a mountain. I want to know, I want somebody to make sense of it, or help me make sense of it I should say, and I don't think that's impossible, and yet it isn't there. So I thought, first of all, I bet there's loads of people like me out in the world, and people who recognise that sinking feeling when some well-motivated, well-meaning individual puts out yet another technically complicated video to show us all how to play the Mixolydian something in the 16th position of something, and we're kind of supposed to be grateful for it, but we're left feeling lost and pointless like before, and actually we don't, most of the time you don't even say anything to the guy who thinks he's doing you such a great service putting up this information. He doesn't get feedback, because actually what have you got to say other than occasionally I do say it, which is, sorry mate, lost me in the first 5 minutes, and it just makes them feel bad and I feel bad and nobody gets anywhere. So so I was thinking about this, and I thought, actually, instead of, the problem, it seems to me, is that the people who know and then think they are equipped to teach, once they know, it seems like it's impossible for them to unknow knowing, right? Bear with me a minute, stick with me. Meaning that they then begin to teach from a sort of start point which assumes that the person they're teaching kind of implicitly assumes, without questioning, some things you don't know, because they know it and they cannot imagine not knowing it again. So they can't put themselves back where you are, and so they teach from where they are, which doesn't connect with where you are. And so I thought, instead of coming from that angle, wouldn't it be nice if somebody came at it from the angle that I'm actually at, which is I haven't got a clue how all this works, but I'm interested, right? And that's what I like. You know, I like to ask questions, I like to find out stuff, and maybe that's why this teaching thing that everyone tries to do with all good heart, best will and kindness and all that good spirit, but the fact that they come at it from I know so I will teach, and maybe that just doesn't work when it comes to making sense of something like scales and music theory. It's certainly for me, and I'm not saying for everybody, it just doesn't work for me. But I don't think I'm alone in that, that's all I'm saying. So anyhow, so what I thought when I was talking to my friend Mark was, he's very much like me. He's a kind of curious character, and you know, loves to find out stuff and loves not knowing and loves the mystery of finding out. And I thought, wouldn't it be great, he and I, to do a learning, making sense of music theory from the best position possible, which is the one I'm at now, which is I haven't got a clue, right? I'm frustrated, I want to know, I'm keen, I'm eager, but I cannot find out because the teaching of it just doesn't work for me. And I thought, well, that would be a really cool, could be a really cool podcast to do. And I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of people like me, maybe the same sort of age group, who, you know, would love to learn some more, but just keep feeling like it's gonna forever be bypass them, and it's going to be beyond them. And I thought, I bet there's some people like me out there who would like to learn this way. So I thought that's maybe I'm going to have a look into doing that. And you know, just begin from the point of view that I don't know anything, which is absolutely correct. I don't know anything, so it wouldn't be a false position. It would be right. I have some questions. I want to know how this works. What the hell is wrong with this? I can't hold anything. Anyway, right. So I have got new strings on, everything working sort of backwards, so all the thin strings this side. Now I've got the important thing to do before we go anywhere else with this is to stretch out as much as we can. We've helped the process along by leaving as little wound onto the pegs as possible, and when you see it up close, Richard, you'll see that there's very little in the way of string winds on the pegs, on the posts, which is ideal. We want as little on there as possible. I'm just doing an initial kind of quick stretch just to get everything sort of seated. The thing you've got to, well, like that for example, the thing you've got to bear in mind is that the thin strings are very vulnerable, delicate, and we don't want to overstretch those and end up, see, that didn't seat all the way through properly, but now it will. So we don't want to end up breaking any of them right at this point in time, because it's going to cost us in string replacements. While I'm there, I'm going to take all these little plastic covery things off, because it's a little bit like having the plastic covers on your seats, on your car seats. It looks sort of half finished. So there we are. The job is now done. Da -da -da -da. Wow. Oh no, they are. I thought they were little slot screws for a minute. I thought I've never seen that on tuners before. Okay, so we have the strings on, and what I'm going to do is there's quite a long length of strings after the nut, so part of what we've got to do is sort of stretch them a bit to try and get rid of as much of the slack as we can without overstressing them, and then get hold of each string and give it a gentle thumb and forefinger push without straining against any sharp points at the nut or the saddle, which is easier said than done, especially with 12 strings. It takes a while to get there, so I'm just trying to waddle my way along and do this, and this is just for the sake of getting as much of the inbuilt slack out, and this will be the key to tuning stability, and you know, there's no quick way around it. It takes a while to do this, but if you know, I think it's essential on any guitar, but I can't even think of anyone more essential than a 12 string, where the whole experience is just diminished if you know, if you don't get that tuning stability quickly. And like I said right at the beginning, the two primary components of that, nothing to do with the tuners, by the way. They have almost no role in holding the tuning stability. Even the cheapest, nastiest Chinese tuners, vintage tin foil tuners, keep a guitar in tune. What does vary in the different quality and brands of tuner is the smoothness of operation, and I totally agree. If you want a smoother, more direct, higher geared tuner, then certainly go and, you know, buy a more expensive one. But if you've got tuning instability, do not go and spend 30, 40, 50 pounds on a set of tuners expecting it to do anything for your tuning stability, because it won't. Tuning stability is dependent almost entirely on stretching the slack out your strings like this, and making sure that your nut slots at this end are perfectly cut and free running, like we've taken a lot of time to do today. So those are the two key factors, and if you pay attention to those, I promise you, you will be rewarded with a guitar, or guitars, many guitars, that just play beautifully well, and you will wonder why you ever lived with guitars that didn't stay in tune before. So having just moved everything around, you've got to sort of make sure everything's back in its their various slots. I cut this one down a tiny little fraction. I filed it because it wasn't holding the string. But anyway. So that's, oh, not quite. Wrong one. I think I'm doing the right thing. Now I can I'm doing an octave here, aren't I? Oh, how do you find the right notes for this? I wonder if I can find it on here. Ah, sorry, this will be in your ears. I get confused after a while of listening to these different notes. Let me try and find a 12-string tuning. Oh, come on, come on, come on. 12-string tuning. Sorry about this. 12-string tuning tone. Tuning tones. Can you give me some tones? Thank you. Didn't think it would be that hard, would you? In the internet era? Tuning some tune instrument. Use this free online tuner. Use one of them. Anything. Come on. Simple 12-string guitar tuner. Yeah, any chance? Oh, don't make me go to a... I want an online one, I don't want to go to an app. Lord. No, it doesn't work on a Mac. Oh, holy crag. Somebody. No, Morris, not right now. Oh, hold on. Getting there. getting there. play 12 string much. Anyway, yeah, well, just stabilising the tuning, and I think we're pretty much there. Falling into the old Final Cut Pink Floyd mode there for a minute. Floating down through the clouds, memories come rushing up to meet me now. But in the space between the heavens and the corner of some foreign view, I have a dream. As we're walking directly to the car, and the silver in her hair shines in the cold November air. Something like that. Anyway, yeah, plenty of good old Pink Floyd songs from that era. Mother, do you think to drop the phone? Dave Gilmour's guitar solo in their imagination right there, eh? Hard to play that one. Okay, well, it works, all right. That's the whole point. The whole point. It works. I've got to say, Richard, the pickups aren't the best I've heard. They're a little bit harsh in the bridge position, and a little bit woolly in the neck, but you know, for a kit it's great. Yeah, it's funny, that middle position, we've got a definite out of phase. Classics, eh? Oh, look, I happen to have a little book tucked away over here. I don't know what is there in here. There's some great old things, but I can never find which ones to play at the time being. That one. Getting better all the time. You know, if you write, I can't remember any of them that he played on a 12 string. Cause I'm the one who wants you, cause you could find better things to do. Yeah. Did they play anything? Did the Beatles play anything in 12 string? Out myself. No, where we go? No, come on, A flat minor. Affecting the camera. I'm so sorry. I'll get back to him. I did try him earlier on. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, so Nowhere Man. Hey. What other things were there? Can't think of any right now, but I don't think they did anything with 12 string. Can't think of it. There were, of course, lots of other 60 songs with 12 strings, but oh, I suppose there was this one, but we had a capo on the 7th fret. See what happens. 5, 6, 7. Oh, that's a bit tight. Something like that. Does it hold this down or not? Here comes the sun. rundown thing, isn't there? Yeah, I'll work that out one day, but oh yeah, 87. Obviously I don't know that one either, but there we go. So look, I'm done, and I hope that didn't bore you too much, but a bit more stretching to go, but that is it done. Playing and a nice low action. No, welcome my son, welcome to the machine. Yeah, that one. What else is there in the realm of 12 string? Redemption song, but that isn't right for 12 string. Okay, well there you go, look. The homemade kit, rescued from obscurity by shimming the neck twice, two different places or different ways, bringing the action back up to a decent level. We've still got tweaks and alterations we can make to that, but by and large, even with the tuning still stabilising and my terrible playing, you can tell that's pretty nice sounding, and I hope that Richard's going to enjoy this. What's that song? That one. That one. Anyway, hope you enjoy it, Richard. It's been a pleasure fixing it up for you in Real Love Guitars. Sorry it's dragged on a bit, but you know, 12 string for you. Everything as good as it can be, given the factory faults really that this thing came with. So you'd be able to look at the video, you'd be able to see how to realign the shims if you need to take the back off ever. But hopefully you'll just be able to play it and enjoy it. We could probably even go a little bit lower than this, but I'm quite happy with the way it is right now, so I'm going to leave it there. So there you go. Lots of jangling, twangling aside. I'll see you for another one. In fact, the next one is going to be Richard's bass, so we'll get on to that in a minute. Thanks for spending time in the Real Love Guitars workshop with me, and I hope to see you soon for another one.